The glow of monitors cast a pale, flickering light across the room, revealing tired eyes and slumped shoulders. Dwayne hadn't moved from his post all night, the rhythmic tapping of keyboards and the low hum of the data processors forming an unrelenting background noise. The control room, once charged with anticipation, now carried an air of weary vigilance. Empty coffee cups and hastily scribbled notes cluttered the desks, evidence of a night spent waiting for an enemy who never came. Marcus sat in a chair, head resting against the wall, eyes half closed but still alert. Another agent paced in slow, deliberate steps, his body a coiled spring of tension ready to snap at any moment. Max, hunched over his workstation, typed with focused determination, eyes scanning lines of code and surveillance feeds for any sign of Fletch. Dwayne shifted his weight, stretching muscles stiffened by hours of inactivity. His eyes darted to the main screen, which displayed maps, profiles, and live footage from various points of interest. The silence stretched long, each second ticking louder than the last. It was now the early morning of February 23rd, the faint glow of dawn beginning to filter through the cracks of the reinforced blinds. The world outside was waking up, unaware of the silent battle being waged within this hidden control center. "Anything?" Dwayne asked, his voice breaking the heavy silence. Max shook his head, the exhaustion evident in the dark circles under his eyes. "No movement, no sightings. It's like he's disappeared off the face of the earth." Marcus leaned forward, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "This isn't like Kendall. If he's laying low, it means he's planning something bigger or waiting for the perfect moment, so we need to be ready for anything." Dwayne nodded, eyes hardening as he took in the room. "We can't afford to get complacent. Fletch may not have shown up last night, but that doesn't mean he won't strike when we least expect it." The other agent, collectively known as Tito, stopped pacing, his eyes meeting Dwayne's with a glint of determination. "We keep our guard up, we keep watching, and when he does make a move, we'll be ready." The team exchanged silent looks of agreement. This mission was far from over, and they all knew it. The morning light seeped into the room, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for them, a reminder that even in daylight, darkness could still prevail. At 7:30, Aaron and Jesse video-conferenced into the control room, the faint signs of healing still etched across their bodies, but their steps were steady and determined. "Morning, Dwayne," Aaron greeted, a hint of curiosity in his tone. Jesse followed with a smirk. "Morning," Dwayne responded, his voice steady but filled with purpose. Jesse's grin widened as he leaned against a console. "So what's the plan, boss? I'm still waiting to hear how you're going to turn this operation into the revolution you keep talking about." Dwayne's eyes met Jesse's, unwavering. "Patience, Jesse. You'll see soon enough." Before more could be said, the line chimed with an incoming call. Celeste's voice resonated through the speaker, smooth and commanding as always. "Dwayne, I wanted to reach you before the day started. The investors are impressed with your progress and your tenacity. They've been waiting for someone like you for a long time, someone they can place their efforts behind. With my position, it could have never been me. But you're different. And thank you, Dwayne, for steering Jesse and Aaron away from paths that might have ended their stories prematurely." A rare smile touched Dwayne's face. "Celeste, I'm honored to be part of this. I promise to do my best to help our people." A voice cleared behind him, a subtle sound that caught his attention. He turned to see his mother standing at the doorway, pride and something deeper in her eyes. She nodded, silently giving her approval. Dwayne, heart brimming, turned back to the room. "We've been fighting these battles since we were dragged here on ships and since we walked across borders. Our voices were never loud enough. We had to march, to beg, to bleed, and even then, the fight wasn't over. Jesse once told me, at one time, the white man's dog had more rights than a black man." He was right. We have fought for scraps and given marginal equality that comes with an asterisk. I'm tired of seeing our people buried under headlines and hashtags, tired of justice that evaporates faster than rain on hot asphalt. The room hung on his words, every gaze locked on him. "This ends now. We're the ones who are going to make that change. No, Jesse, it doesn't mean more deaths. It means restructuring, reimagining, and dismantling every system built to keep us in check. We are going to change the world. But before we do that, we need to change the course of these loaded guns we have aimed at the wrong targets. Dwayne turned to one of the monitors. Dallon, he pauses. Excuse me. Deweese, he said, catching Aaron and Jesse's small grins. Send me a full personnel list and an asset inventory. Email it to me. Max, Dwayne continued, where are we on finding Fletch? We need updates from all of the field agents. The room buzzed, the energy palpable, the mission a living entity breathing around them. Dwayne turned, catching his mother's proud smile, her eyes reflecting a mixture of love and determination. Max's eyes lit up as he pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. We've made progress, Dwayne. Fletch's movements have been erratic, but we've managed to pinpoint a few key locations he's been frequenting. Most of them are safe houses we have in Charlotte. There's a strong chance he's still casing the area around his targets. Dwayne nodded, absorbing the information. Good. I want every angle covered, surveillance drones, street-level intel, and all known contacts monitored. If he makes a move, I want to know about it before he even realizes he's doing it. Marcus, leaning against the edge of a console, chimed in, his voice a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Do you really think he'll go through with it? Dwayne's expression hardened. We can't afford to underestimate him. These deep cover operatives are trained to act under pressure, even when they know the risk. We have to treat every moment like it's critical. Jesse, through another screen, still connected via conference call, still bearing the scars of their last mission, smirked but with a hint of gravity. So boss, what's the play if Fletch spots us? By now you know these guys. If they think the mission is compromised, they'll adapt on the fly or retaliate like Kendall did. That's why we need to stay 2 steps ahead, Dwayne said. We're not here to confront him, not unless it's indispensable. Our goal is to make him see that this isn't the mission he needs to complete. He needs to know he's not alone. Aaron crossed his arms, his voice taking on a serious tone. And what if he doesn't listen, Dwayne? What if he decides that his orders are worth more than his life? Dwayne met Aaron's gaze, unwavering. Then we make sure we're the ones writing the story's ending. No one dies, not on our watch. A soft chime from Deuce interrupted the conversation. Email with personnel list and asset inventory has been sent, the AI announced, its voice precise. Thanks, Deuce, Dwayne said, eyes flicking to the screen as the data loaded. He turned back to his team, the room charged with anticipation. This is it. Today, we move forward, but we do it smart. We do it together. The tension in the room was palpable, yet beneath it lay a shared sense of purpose. Aaron and Jesse exchanged a glance, each understanding that the stakes had never been higher. Max, hands busy with the console, nodded in agreement, his expression a mix of pride and determination. Dwayne took a deep breath, stealing a moment to glance at his mother, who stood in the doorway, silent yet resolute. He turned back to his team, his voice low but firm. Okay, everybody, grab your coffees or energy drinks. Let's get to work. Max's fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling up the most recent surveillance footage. The large screens in the control room flickered and displayed images from various angles, grainy drone footage, CCTV feeds, and thermal scans. All right, Max said, his eyes glued to the screens. Here's what we've got. Within the last 36 hours, Fletch has been spotted near 3 primary locations. A coffee shop just outside Denver on the west side of Lake Norman, North Carolina. A safe house in Lowesville on the southwest side of Lake Norman, North Carolina. And a weapons depot on the east side of Lake Norman, North Carolina. Dwayne's brow furrowed as he scanned the footage. Good work, Max. Keep those feeds running. I want updates every 10 minutes. We need to be ready for any sign that Fletch is preparing to make his move. Based on these activities, he should be somewhere on the northeast, north or northwest side of Lake Norman now, which is close to where Officer Riley's cabin is. He's created his perimeter, established his escape and safe routes. He's about to make his move soon. Update all agents in the area of these findings. Understood, boss. I am on it, Max replied, the hum of the equipment punctuating the silence that followed. Aaron, leaning forward with a focused expression, added, If he's been to those locations within the last 24 hours, it means he's still undecided on which to hit first. We need eyes on the ground, plainclothes operatives who can blend in without raising suspicion. Jesse nodded, tapping his fingers against the table. I will reach out to some of our people nearby. We've got folks who can pass as hikers or someone fishing on the lake. Dwayne's eyes met Jesse's, a silent acknowledgement of their unspoken understanding. Do it, but remind them they're there to observe and report, not engage. Fletch has to feel like he's still in control until we make contact. Max cleared his throat, looking at Dwayne. Do we have any backup plan if Fletch changes locations unexpectedly? He's unpredictable, and he's trained to sense surveillance. Dwayne's jaw tightened. That's why we stay flexible. If he moves, we move. I need everyone sharp and ready. This isn't just about stopping him. It's about bringing him back without bloodshed. Aaron exhaled, tension etched into his face. Let's hope he listens to reason when we find him, rubbing on the fresh wounds that obtained from his tussle with Kendall. Hope is good, Dwayne said, the corners of his mouth lifting in a tight smile. But we need more than hope. We need precision. Marcus, could you prepare an update on the current status of our operatives at both locations? I want full situational awareness. I need to get the team at the other location up to speed and ready to assist if necessary. Marcus nodded, pulling up more live feeds and status reports. The room settled into a quiet buzz of anticipation, each member preparing for the critical hours ahead. The day at Lake Norman, North Carolina, was a paradox of calm and tension. The late February air held a crisp chill, the remnants of winter clinging stubbornly to the landscape. Thin tendrils of mist wove their way across the water's surface, shimmering faintly under the early morning sunlight that strained to break through a sky dappled with wisps of pale, silvery clouds. The occasional breath of wind sent ripples across the lake, whispering secrets to the dense forest that surrounded it. Trees, tall and ancient, stood as silent sentinels, their bare branches reaching out like skeletal arms toward the sky, and patches of evergreens broke the monotony with bursts of deep green. Nestled among these trees was the cabin, a modest wooden structure that appeared weathered but sturdy, exuding an air of secluded tranquility. The structure, with its stone chimney and wide, creaking porch, overlooked the serene expanse of the lake, partially hidden by the thick clusters of pines and oaks. The cabin's windows, glazed with frost, reflected the pale morning light, making it look almost lifeless from a distance. On this chilly morning, silence reigned, broken only by the occasional caw of a bird or the rustling of unseen creatures scurrying through the underbrush. Yet, hidden amidst the forest, tension coiled like a living thing. The cabin at Lake Norman was nestled amid towering pines and oaks, a modest wooden structure that exuded both seclusion and quiet charm. Its weathered exterior was painted a deep forest green, blending seamlessly into the rich, verdant surroundings. The wooden porch wrapped around the cabin, creaking gently in the light breeze that swept through the trees, and the faint aroma of pine needles and damp earth filled the air. The lake itself stretched out just beyond the cabin's front view, its surface mirroring the gray sky above in the early morning light. Gentle ripples stirred the water, disturbed only by the occasional leap of a fish or the steady paddling of a family of ducks moving across the glassy expanse. The sounds of nature enveloped the scene, rustling leaves, the chatter of birds in the canopy, and the distant croak of a bullfrog hidden near the water's edge. The surrounding forest was thick and alive with wildlife that made the area home. White-tailed deer moved cautiously through the underbrush, their ears flicking at any unexpected sound. Squirrels darted up and down the tree trunks, chasing each other with playful abandon, while the metallic hum of cicadas set a rhythmic backdrop. Occasionally, a hawk circled high above, its sharp eyes scanning the ground for prey. Closer to the cabin, the air was more relaxed and carried the scent of the lake, fresh, tinged with the subtle mustiness of wet wood and algae. Wildflowers in hues of yellow and purple peppered the landscape, breaking the uniform green of the forest with pops of color. The path leading to the cabin was narrow and lined with rocks, some moss-covered and slick from the morning dew. Despite the serene beauty, the cabin's remote location lent a feeling of isolation. The dense forest cast long, shifting shadows that crept across the ground, while the call of an owl echoed unexpectedly, its presence a reminder of the hidden creatures that stirred at the edge of sight. Wildlife thrived in this pocket of nature. Raccoons were known to scavenge near the cabin when night fell, while red foxes could sometimes be spotted slinking between the trees, their bright eyes catching the moonlight. Black bears, though rarely seen, were known to roam the more secluded parts of the woods, their foraging often leaving signs, a claw mark on a tree or a disturbed berry bush. The scene at Lake Norman was a blend of tranquil beauty and quiet wildness, a perfect setting for secrets and shadowed movements, where the natural world watched over every step, and the forest itself seemed to breathe in tandem with the lake. The interior of the cabin was rustic and simple, yet it held a certain warmth that spoke of careful craftsmanship and long, quiet nights. The wooden walls were constructed from logs, and their knots and grooves gave the room a rugged texture. The timber was stained a deep amber, polished to a soft sheen that caught the light from the flickering flames in the stone fireplace at the heart of the room. The scent of pine and old smoke lingered in the air, a reminder of countless fires that had kept the cabin warm through cold seasons. The furniture was minimal but functional, each piece carefully chosen for comfort and utility. A worn leather armchair sat angled near the fireplace, its seat well creased from use. Next to it, a small, rough-hewn wooden table held a lantern, a book with frayed edges, and a set of reading glasses, suggesting the cabin's occupant valued quiet moments of reflection. A braided rug in deep shades of red and brown stretched across the hardwood floor, softening the space and adding a touch of coziness. The kitchen was tucked into one corner, separated from the main living space by a wooden counter that bore the marks of knife cuts and time. Open shelves above the counter held mismatched dishes, mason jars filled with dried goods, and old tin containers marked with faded labels. A cast-iron skillet hung from a hook, its dark surface seasoned and gleaming. The stove was an old model, fueled by propane, its knobs slightly worn but sturdy. A single window above the sink framed a view of the lake, its glass smudged from the condensation that clung to it on cooler mornings. The light filtering through was muted, casting soft shadows that played across the countertops. To the left of the kitchen, a narrow hallway led to a small bedroom where a simple cot was dressed in a wool blanket. The colors faded with time. A wooden chest at the foot of the bed held extra linens and a few personal items, its lid slightly ajar to reveal a neatly folded flannel shirt. The cabin's bathroom was practical, with a small sink, a chipped mirror, and a shower stall lined with tiles that had seen better days. The air in this room was cool and faintly damp, carrying the faint scent of cedarwood soap. Shelves lined one wall of the main room, holding a mix of practical items and personal keepsakes: a flashlight, a first aid kit, a radio that crackled to life only when the reception was good, and a handful of framed photos. The photos, faded by the sun, showed images of people laughing, some holding up fish caught from the lake, others posed against the backdrop of dense woods. In a corner, a sturdy wooden desk supported an old typewriter and stacks of papers tied with twine, giving the impression that the cabin was not only a place of rest but of contemplation and solitude. A metal lockbox sat on the desk, discreet but noticeable, hinting at items too precious or private to be left in the open. The entire space was illuminated by a mix of natural light filtering through the windows and the glow of the fire. It was a place that hummed with the echo of stories and the secrets of those who sought refuge within its walls. The atmosphere was one of quiet resilience, where each detail told of a life lived deliberately on the fringe of wilderness, with only the forest and lake as witnesses. Inside the cabin at Lake Norman, Officer Marcus Riley sat comfortably in a well-worn leather armchair positioned near a large window that overlooked the glistening water. The late February sun filtered through the glass, casting a warm golden glow that softened the room's rustic interior. Outside, the skeletal branches of winter trees stood stark against the blue sky, while the occasional call of a hawk or the distant rustle of wildlife broke the silence, adding to the tranquil ambiance. The interior of the cabin was a blend of rugged charm and simple comforts. A stone fireplace, its embers barely glowing, exuded a subtle warmth that kept the chill at bay. Wooden beams crisscrossed the ceiling, adding to the cabin's timeless feel. On a nearby wooden table, a half-empty mug of steaming coffee gave off an earthy aroma, mixing with the faint scent of pine that seemed to permeate the entire cabin. The shelves were lined with books on fishing, history, and old case studies, testaments to a mind that sought distraction and solace in stories removed from his own. Riley, a man in his late 40s with thinning brown hair and a broad, tired face, leaned back, allowing the silence to seep into him. His gray-blue eyes, lined with the marks of years spent under stress, surveyed the room absently. He took a deep breath, feeling the calm settle in his chest. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, there were no demands, no reports, no questions. Just the quiet hum of nature outside and the reassuring creak of the wooden floor as the cabin shifted subtly with the wind. Despite the peace, a gnawing tension sat uncomfortably in the back of Riley's mind. His leave had been sudden, spurred by an unrelenting weight that he couldn't fully explain. The stillness was both a gift and a curse. It offered him rest, but also left too much room for memories to resurface, shadows of moments that haunted him. He pushed those thoughts away, focusing instead on the sound of the gentle lapping water just outside, trying to convince himself that he deserved this moment of reprieve. Riley's gaze fell to a photo frame on the table beside him. It held a picture of him with a group of colleagues, smiles wide, arms draped around each other. A time before everything had changed. He turned the frame face down, the slight thud echoing louder than it should have in the still cabin. The faintest of frowns creased his forehead as he sipped his coffee, willing the peace to hold. In the makeshift control center miles away, Dwayne sat at the command station, his eyes glued to the screen, where live drone footage streamed back every detail of the wooded area. The operative teams on the ground, camouflaged to blend seamlessly with their surroundings, maintained their positions with precision. Their breath clouded in front of their faces, the cold biting through layers of tactical gear. Max, seated nearby, worked quickly, fingers tapping with a practiced rhythm on his keyboard. The drone's view swayed gently as it moved through the dense trees, its sensors relaying everything in real time. The screen showed a lumbering figure moving steadily toward the cabin, a hulking, fur-covered shape that appeared at first glance to be a black bear. The voice of one of the operatives crackled through the comms, low and steady. Confirmed visual on movement. Sensors show animal patterns. No sign of human presence. Dwayne's sharp gaze dissected the footage, the movements too deliberate, too precise for a bear. His instincts, honed through years of training and practice, screamed that what he was looking at was not wildlife. "Max, zoom in and stabilize the drone," Dwayne ordered, his voice calm but tight with focus. Max complied, and the screen image magnified, showing the disguised figure moving with subtle intent toward the cabin's door. The operatives on the ground remained tense, their eyes flitting between their surroundings and the silent orders on their displays. "Max." Dwayne's voice was low, but it held an urgency that drew the eyes of everyone in the room. "Get that drone close and open the speaker channel, now." A beat passed, then another, as the drone hovered closer, its small whir blending into the ambient noise of the forest. The figure, an operative in full camouflage designed to mimic a bear, paused, head tilting as if hearing something. The speaker clicked on with a soft hiss, and Dwayne leaned forward, drawing in a breath. "Fletch," Dwayne's voice projected through the woods, clear and firm. "Stand down. We know you're there, and we need to talk." The figure froze, muscles tightening under the elaborate disguise. There was no immediate response, only the shifting of the trees in the wind and the creak of the cabin's wooden steps. Dwayne's eyes never left the screen, heart pounding as he watched for any sign of movement. The quiet stretched, each second heavier than the last, as the operatives on the ground held their positions, ready for whatever came next. Max's fingers flew over the keyboard, eyes wide with urgency. "Dwayne, we've got FBI chatter. They're en route to the cabin, and they'll be there any minute." Dwayne's jaw clenched as he processed this new complication. "Damn it, Fletch, we don't have time for this." He raised his voice through the drone speaker, hoping to reach the operative before it was too late. "You need to move. The FBI is closing in." The figure that had been frozen at the door shifted slightly, head turning toward the sound of Dwayne's voice as if considering. Tension rippled through the control room. Every eye was on the screen, watching the disguised Fletch make a decision that could change everything. The operatives stationed around the cabin exchanged glances, fingers tightening on their gear. The air in the control room was electric with anticipation. Dwayne glanced at the clock. Seconds ticked away as the window to act narrowed. "Come on, Fletch," Dwayne muttered under his breath. He turned to Max. "Can we create a diversion? Anything to buy more time?" Max nodded. "I can trigger a sound burst from the drone's speakers. It'll sound like a car alarm, enough to spook anyone nearby, including Fletch." "Do it," Dwayne commanded. Max pressed a few keys, and the drone emitted a low, guttural growl and an ear-piercing screech that echoed through the woods. Birds erupted from nearby trees, flapping away in a cacophony of wings. Fletch flinched, the hesitation breaking as he glanced over his shoulder. He spotted the glimmer of agents in the distance, barely perceptible shadows in the thick brush. "Move now, Fletch, to your left." Dwayne's voice came again through the speaker, and it was more urgent this time. Fletch's disguise dropped. He shed the heavy bear camouflage, revealing lean muscle and quick reflexes. His eyes darted across the landscape, assessing. He bolted, not toward the agents or the cabin, but deeper into the woods, disappearing into the shadows just as the distant sound of sirens began to pierce the calm of the forest. "Agent Williams, the FBI is almost at the perimeter," one of the operatives on the ground whispered into the comms, voice taut with adrenaline. "Fall back, keep eyes on the cabin," Dwayne ordered, glancing back at the monitors that now showed the approach of black SUVs through the winding dirt paths. "Aaron, Jesse, report." "We're moving in," Aaron's voice came over the line, laced with frustration. "Fletch is moving, but we're sticking close." Dwayne leaned back, exhaling slowly, eyes shifting between the live feeds and the maps. The game was changing, and the stakes were higher than ever. Fletch had slipped through their grasp, but at least the confrontation hadn't escalated into violence, this time. The presence of the FBI added another layer to their challenges, and Dwayne knew he had to stay 2 steps ahead to keep everything from unraveling. Dwayne's pulse thundered in his ears as he watched the screen, the live feed from the drones showing the dark silhouettes of FBI agents closing in on Fletch. He was heading directly for their location. The tension in the control room was thick, every person holding their breath as they awaited Dwayne's decision. Max's voice cut through the silence, urgent and strained. "Dwayne, they're going to make a move on him. We're out of time." "Max, you can tell our guys from them, right?" Dwayne asked in a hurry. "Yeah, that's light work for me," Max said as he prepares for what's next. "Tranquilize anything that's moving in the area. If it's FBI, put them to sleep," Dwayne ordered, his voice calm but laced with determination. Without hesitation, Max's fingers flew over the controls, programming the drones and robotic units that had been strategically stationed around the perimeter. The hum of technology thrummed in the background as commands were sent, and Dwayne's eyes remained glued to the screens. Outside, the forest erupted into controlled chaos. The first drone released a stream of tranquilizers, and within moments, the nearest FBI agents dropped to the ground, their bodies slumping into unconsciousness. The scene played out like a silent ballet of precision. One by one, the agents collapsed, taken by surprise by the unseen force in the trees. Fletch, who had been standing with his back against the rough bark of an ancient oak, eyes wild and breath heaving, turned as Arrow, Jesse, and the retrieval team moved in like shadows. His eyes darted to the side as one operative signaled for silence, raising a gloved finger to his lips. "Stay calm, Fletch." The operative whispered, grabbing his arm firmly, but not aggressively. "We're getting you out of here." Fletch nodded, a flicker of understanding crossing his sharp gaze. The team guided him swiftly into the underbrush, moving with practiced efficiency as the drones continued to monitor and secure the perimeter. The soft thuds of agents hitting the ground faded behind them as they pushed deeper into the woods. In the control room, Dwayne's jaw unclenched as he saw Fletch being extracted without resistance. The tension that had gripped the room moments before began to dissipate, replaced by a collective sense of relief. "Max, status update," Dwayne called out, leaning forward, eyes still glued to the monitors. "All FBI targets are taking a nap. No fatalities. The retrieval team is clear and en route back," Max reported, a triumphant note in his voice. "Good. All units, pull out, Dwayne ordered. The operatives moved swiftly, blending into the dense forest and disappearing without a trace. Within minutes, the scene was eerily quiet. The fallen agents were left in a dazed sprawl that would take them time to recover from. Dwayne allowed himself a slight nod of satisfaction. It had been a calculated risk, but they had managed to prevent a violent confrontation and secure their operative without a single casualty. As the feeds shifted to show the agents beginning to stir and radio for backup, Dwayne knew that today, at least, they had won. The control room exhaled with the subdued energy of relief. Dwayne exhaled, feeling the tight coil of tension in his chest release, but only slightly. The mission had been a success, but he knew that Fletch's extraction would set off a chain reaction that would keep them on high alert for days, if not weeks. He turned to Max, who was already scanning the incoming data feeds. Max, keep an eye on any new developments. The moment those agents report back, the FBI will start piecing things together, Dwayne said, his voice steady but edged with urgency. Max nods, his eyes darting across the screen as his fingers move with practiced precision. Already on it. I'll patch in any comms chatter we intercept. Dwayne takes a deep breath, stepping back from the command station. The tension in the room lingers, but he knows he needs a moment to regroup. Max, keep me updated on anything that comes through. I'll be back shortly. Without waiting for a response, Dwayne exits the control room, his steps measured but heavy with the weight of the mission. He navigates the quiet corridors, the hum of the base's systems his only companion, until he reaches a small, dimly lit lounge where his mother waits. She's seated in an armchair, a cup of tea in her hands, her posture calm but watchful. She looks up as Dwayne enters, her eyes immediately scanning his face. "You've got that look again," she says softly, setting the cup down on the small table beside her. "What look?" Dwayne asks, managing a faint smile as he sits across from her. "The one that says you're carrying the world on your shoulders," she replies, her voice gentle but firm. "Come on, baby, talk to me." Dwayne leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees and rubbing his hands together. "It's just everything," he admits after a long pause. "The FBI's breathing down our necks. Fletch's extraction was too close for comfort, and now we've got to stay 3 steps ahead just to survive. Every move feels like it's make or break." His mother studies him, her gaze steady and unwavering. "You've always been hard on yourself, Dwayne. Even as a boy, you wanted everything to be perfect, to make sure everyone was taken care of. But you can't pour from an empty cup, son. You need to let yourself breathe." Dwayne exhales, her words hitting closer to home than he wants to admit. "I don't have the luxury of slowing down, Mom. If I miss something, anything, people could get hurt. I can't let that happen." She reaches out, placing a hand over his. "You're one man, Dwayne, a good man. But even you can't do this alone. That's why you have a team. Trust them and trust yourself. You've done everything in your power to keep this mission on track. That's all anyone can ask of you." Dwayne nods, his jaw tightening as he absorbs her words. "I know you're right. I want to make sure I don't let anyone down. Not the team, not the mission, not our people." "You won't," she says with quiet conviction. "You've got the heart for this, and you've got the smarts. But don't forget to lean on those around you. That's what leaders do. They guide, they delegate, and they trust." Dwayne straightens, his resolve hardening as the weight on his shoulders feels a little lighter. "Thanks, Mom. I needed that." She smiles, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're going to be just fine, baby. Go back out there and show them why you're the one in charge." As Dwayne stands and heads for the door, the faint sound of approaching footsteps reaches his ears. The door opens just as he steps back into the corridor, revealing Aaron and Jesse, their expressions a mix of anticipation and exhaustion. Jesse is the first to speak, his eyes alight with both relief and wariness. "I told you we'd get him out clean." Dwayne gave a brief nod. "Fletch is with the team. No casualties, no trace left behind." He caught Aaron's eye and saw the flicker of concern that mirrored his own. This was a victory, but a fragile one. Aaron leaned against the edge of a desk, folding his arms. "We've just bought ourselves some time, but it's not much. The FBI will know someone intervened, and they won't rest until they find out who." Jesse snorted, a hint of his old bravado slipping through. Let them search. They'll come up with nothing. Dwayne's face hardened. That's exactly what we need to ensure. No mistakes, no slip-ups. Kendall and Fletch are both safe now, but we can't keep playing defense. We need to start thinking ahead. Before anyone could respond, the door to the control room opened. Kendall, Marks, and Fletch stepped in, flanked by the retrieval teams. Kendall looked a bit weary from being tranked, and Fletch looked every bit the ghost they'd known him to be, his eyes sharp and alert despite the ordeal. His gaze locked with Dwayne's, and there was a moment of silence thick with unspoken words. "Welcome back, fellas," Dwayne said, breaking the quiet. "We need to talk." Kendall's lips quirked into a thin smile. "Omar Gaines is my real name. Kendall was the operative name. And let's talk. I thought you'd never ask." The room was quiet, everyone waiting for what would come next. Dwayne knew this was just the beginning. The FBI would be on their heels soon, and with Fletch and Kendall now in the fold, their fight to stay ahead of the game and to control the narrative was only getting started. Meanwhile, in Cleveland, Ohio, the weight of past decisions crashes down with devastating force. Officer Marla Kay and Officer Simon Hemming had spent years trying to forget the events of that cold Cleveland night, but the memories had grown heavier with each passing day. What was meant to be a routine wellness check turned into a nightmare. They were called to assist 37-year-old Talia Andrews, a woman known to her family for her bright spirit and her battles with mental illness. Her family had dialed for help, hoping for care and compassion. Instead, they witnessed their loved one restrained on the pavement, face down, as she struggled to breathe. Her cries faded into silence, and by the time paramedics arrived, Talia was unresponsive. The city would later learn that she had died due to the officers' restraint tactics. Despite public outrage, Kay and Hemming avoided charges, though they could not escape the court of public opinion or their own guilt. On a quiet February evening, the walls of that guilt finally closed in. Officer Marla Kay's body was discovered first. Her colleagues had noticed her absence during shift change, and a search led them to the precinct's locker room. The scene was horrific. Her lifeless form was found slumped over in one of the restroom stalls. Her head was submerged in the toilet, her arms limp at her sides. A hastily scrawled note was left behind, water-stained and crumpled. The words, though smudged, were unmistakable. "I can't take it anymore. Talia's face haunts me every day. I'm sorry." The sheer brutality of her death stunned everyone who saw it. The method, a deliberate and horrifying act of self-destruction, spoke volumes about the depths of her anguish. The precinct fell into an uneasy silence as word of the incident spread, but the nightmare wasn't over. Only hours later, Officer Simon Hemming was found in his home. He had taken his own life in the garage, hanging himself in a gruesome display. His body was discovered by a neighbor who had noticed the garage door left ajar and called for help. A note lay on his workbench, the handwriting shaky but the message clear. "We failed her. I failed her. I don't deserve to live." The dual suicides left the precinct and the city of Cleveland in shock. Those who had once rallied behind Kay and Hemming now questioned whether justice had been served, or if this was an eerie reckoning. Investigators were baffled by the timing and the similarities in the officers' actions, prompting whispers of conspiracy, though their notes suggested that guilt and grief were their only tormentors. For the Andrews family, the officers' deaths were bittersweet. While some saw the suicides as an acknowledgement of guilt, others found no solace in their passing. Talia was gone, and no amount of remorse could bring her back. The community, too, was divided, some mourning the officers as victims of a broken system, others seeing their deaths as a grim reflection of the harm they had caused. The tragedy of Marla Kay and Simon Hemming cast a long shadow over Cleveland. Their actions during that fateful encounter had set a series of events into motion that no one could have predicted. The haunting manner of their deaths only deepened the wounds, leaving the city to grapple with the legacy of lives lost and lives ruined. As the city tried to move forward, one thing became clear. Justice was not merely a matter of laws and trials, but a question of morality and humanity. And in this case, the weight of that question had proven too much for two officers to bear. Or was it something more sinister at play? Talia Banderson's case resolved. Talia Banderson's case resolved. Talia Banderson's case resolved.